The evening began like any other, yet something in the air felt different. The sky above Los Angeles carried a soft glow, and the streets buzzed with voices, cars, and lights. Sydney Sweeney had just finished a long day of filming. She was tired, her mind heavy with the pressure of success and the constant demand to prove herself in every role. She walked slowly toward the car waiting for her, thinking only of rest, when she noticed a small group gathered at the corner of the street. At first she wanted to ignore it, but then she heard a faint cry. It was not loud, but it was sharp enough to cut through the noise around her. She turned her head and saw an older man, clothes worn, face tired, sitting beside a cart of broken things. People walked past him. Some glanced but kept moving, and some shook their heads. Sydney paused. In her heart, she felt the weight of that cry. She wanted to walk closer, but something held her back. She was young, known, and always surrounded by cameras. One wrong step, one picture in the wrong place, and people would talk endlessly. Just then, she noticed another figure approach the man. The figure was tall, wearing a simple jacket, moving with calm steps. It took her a moment to recognize him. Her eyes widened slowly because it was Keanu Reeves. He did not arrive with cameras. No crowd followed him. He walked like any ordinary man, quiet and without any sign of pride. Sydney froze where she stood, almost hidden behind a tree. She could see clearly how he bent down, lowered his body so that he was not standing over the man, but sitting near him on the street. Keanu spoke softly, words too low for her to hear, but his tone was gentle. The older man's trembling slowed. Keanu placed a hand lightly on his shoulder, not with pity, but with respect. Then Keanu reached into his jacket and pulled out something, first a bottle of water, then a paper bag of food. It was clear he had come prepared. The man accepted it slowly, his face showing both shame and relief. Sydney felt her throat tighten as she watched the moment. In that instant, all the glamour of Hollywood, all the heavy lights and red carpets felt so far away. What mattered was this quiet act of kindness that no one else seemed to notice. Keanu did not look around, did not search for cameras, did not care who saw him. He simply stayed there, listening with patience, nodding gently, giving the man time and dignity. Sydney leaned back against the tree, her breath uneven. She had always respected Keanu as an actor, but now she saw him as something more. She felt like she was seeing his true self, the part that people rarely talked about, the side hidden behind movie screens and interviews. Her driver called her name, but she could not answer. She stayed where she was, watching, as if frozen in that moment. She thought of her own journey, the times she had felt alone, the nights she had cried in silence, fearing she was not enough. Now she saw how one small act of care could change the weight someone carried. Sydney whispered to herself, almost without knowing, "This is real." Her voice shook with emotion. Keanu stood up slowly, helped the man adjust his cart, and gave him a small bow before walking away. The man's eyes filled with tears, not from pain, but from being seen, truly seen, even for a brief moment. Sydney could not move. Her heart pounded with a mix of respect, humility, and awe. She knew she had just witnessed something that would not leave her. And in that moment, she realized that the kindness of one man could teach her more than any script, any award, or any lesson. She stepped back into the street, but her mind was no longer the same. She wanted to follow, to thank him, to tell him what it meant to watch him do this. But her voice stayed trapped in her chest. Instead, she carried the image like a secret flame, something to guide her in ways she had not yet understood. The night continued, but inside her a story had just begun. The next morning, Sydney woke up early, her mind still restless. She replayed the scene from last night again and again. She remembered the way Keanu knelt down, the way he spoke with patience, the way he walked away without waiting for thanks. She felt as if she had seen something private, something not meant for the world, yet powerful enough to change her heart. On set that day, she struggled to focus. Her lines came out flat. Her smile felt empty. The director asked her if she was tired, and she nodded, but in truth her heart was elsewhere. She could not stop thinking about kindness, about what it really meant. She wondered if she herself would have acted that way. She wondered if she had been too busy chasing recognition to notice the quiet needs of others. During lunch break, she sat alone in her trailer. The noise of the crew outside faded into silence. She scrolled through her phone, news articles flashing across the screen, but none of them spoke of what she had seen. There were headlines about awards, about scandals, about money, but not a single word about a man who chose to sit on the street beside someone forgotten. Sydney felt a strange ache in her chest. She whispered softly to herself, "What kind of world forgets moments like that?" As she sat there, her assistant knocked on the door. "Sydney, someone is here to see you." She frowned, surprised. Visitors were rare during filming. When she stepped outside, her eyes widened. It was Keanu. He stood quietly, hands in his pockets, wearing the same simple jacket. There was no crowd, no photographers, just him. Her voice trembled. You're here." He gave a small smile. "I didn't mean to interrupt. I just wanted to say hello. I know you're working hard." For a moment, she was speechless. She wanted to tell him everything, about how she had seen him last night, about how it changed her, but the words caught in her throat. Instead, she nodded. "Thank you. It means a lot." Keanu tilted his head slightly as if sensing her unease. "You look like something is on your mind." Sydney hesitated. Should she tell him? Would it be too much? Finally, her heart pushed the words out. "Last night, I saw you." His expression changed slightly, not with fear, but with quiet understanding. "I saw what you did for that man on the street," she continued, her voice soft. I don't think I'll ever forget it." Keanu lowered his gaze, almost embarrassed. "It was nothing. Just a man who needed someone to notice." "No," Sydney said firmly, her voice shaking but strong. "It wasn't nothing. It was kindness. And it was real." Keanu looked at her then, his eyes calm, yet deep with meaning. "The world doesn't change from grand speeches or awards. It changes when someone decides to care, even in small ways." His words sank into her like seeds planted in soil. She felt tears form in her eyes, but she held them back. After a pause, Keanu smiled again, that same quiet, humble smile. "Take care of yourself, Sydney. Don't let the noise of the world make you forget who you are." With that, he stepped away, leaving her standing there, her heart beating fast. She wanted to call after him, to ask him more, but she knew he would not want praise. He lived by action, not by recognition. When she returned to her trailer, she sat down slowly, her body trembling. She realized she had just been given a gift, one not of fame or wealth, but of truth. She felt both heavy and light at the same time. For the first time in months, she opened her journal, a book she had left untouched because she thought she had nothing to say. But now the words poured out of her. She wrote about the man on the street, about the quiet act of kindness, about how it made her question her own life. And as she wrote, she realized something deep. She wanted to carry that same light. The day went on, scenes were filmed, cameras rolled, but in her heart, the real story was only beginning. The following week moved slowly. But inside Sydney, something was changing. She went to work every day, smiled for the cameras, spoke in interviews, yet her heart was elsewhere. The memory of Keanu's words stayed with her like a quiet echo. She found herself watching people differently. She noticed the crew members who worked late without thanks, the assistants who carried heavy bags without complaint, the drivers who waited hours outside under the sun. She wondered how many of them were seen, how many were truly noticed. One evening after a long shoot, she asked her driver to stop at a small diner instead of rushing her home. The place was nearly empty, the smell of coffee and old wood filling the air. She sat in a corner booth, her mind tired but restless. And then, she saw him again. Keanu sat alone at a table near the window, a notebook open in front of him, pen in hand. Her breath caught. For a moment she thought about leaving quietly, but something stronger pushed her forward. She walked slowly toward him. "May I join you?" she asked softly. Keanu looked up, surprised, then smiled. "Of course." She sat down across from him, feeling both nervous and calm. The silence between them was not heavy. It was gentle, like a pause in music. She glanced at his notebook, but the pages were filled with small sketches and half-written thoughts she could not understand. "Do you always write alone?" she asked. "Sometimes," he said. "It helps me think. It reminds me of who I am, outside the noise." Sydney nodded slowly. "I've been thinking a lot, too. About that night. About what you said." Keanu leaned back, listening. He did not interrupt, and that alone gave her courage. "I realized how much I chase things that don't matter," she admitted. "The perfect role, the perfect picture, the approval of people I don't even know. But what you did, it made me ask myself, what am I really giving to others?" Keanu's eyes softened. "It's not wrong to want success, Sydney. But if success is all we want, we lose ourselves. The world remembers kindness longer than fame." His words struck her heart like a quiet storm. She felt tears well up, and this time she did not stop them. "I don't know if I can be like that," she whispered. "I don't know if I'm strong enough." Keanu reached across the table not to hold her hand but to rest his palm lightly on the table between them. It was a gesture of closeness, without demand. "Strength doesn't mean being unbreakable," he said gently. "Strength means choosing kindness, even when it's easier not to." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The sound of the diner clock ticking filled the silence. Sydney felt something inside her shift, like a door opening. Then, out of nowhere, a young waitress stumbled near their table, dropping a tray of glasses. The crash echoed through the diner. Sydney flinched, but before she could move, Keanu stood, helped the waitress gather the pieces, and spoke to her with calm reassurance. "Don't worry. It happens. You're doing fine." The waitress nodded, her face red with embarrassment, but Keanu's voice steadied her. Sydney watched closely, realizing once again that his kindness was not a performance. It was part of him, natural and effortless. When he sat back down, she whispered, "You don't even think about it, do you? You just do it." He smiled faintly. "Kindness should not be delayed. The moment you think too long, it slips away." Sydney leaned back, her heart heavy yet light at the same time. She realized this was not about copying Keanu, not about trying to be him. It was about finding her own way to live with that same honesty. When she finally left the diner that night, the city lights felt different. They no longer blinded her, they guided her. Days turned into weeks, and the changes inside Sydney began to show quietly, even if no one else noticed at first. She started greeting every crew member by name, something she had never taken time to do before. She began carrying small snacks in her bag to share with the assistants who worked late into the night. Little by little, she felt herself becoming softer, but also stronger. The lesson Keanu had shown her was not fading. It was growing. One afternoon, while filming on location downtown, a sudden rainstorm forced the crew to stop. Everyone rushed for cover, umbrellas opening, jackets pulled overhead. Sydney stood under the awning of a shop, watching the streets blur with water. And then she saw him. The same old man she had seen on that first night, the one with the broken cart. He was struggling in the rain, trying to push his cart across the flooded street. Cars honked, water splashed, and people passed by quickly, not wanting to get wet. Without thinking, Sydney stepped forward. She left the awning, her clothes soaking in seconds, her hair plastered to her face. She reached the man and placed her hands firmly on the cart. "Let me help you," she said, her voice strong despite the storm. The man looked at her in shock. "Miss, you'll get wet." "It doesn't matter," she replied, pushing with all her strength. The cart rolled slowly through the rushing water, wheels squeaking, but together they reached the other side. The man's eyes filled with tears as he whispered, "Thank you." Sydney smiled, her breath heavy, her body shaking from the cold rain. "You don't need to thank me. Just take care of yourself." The crew across the street stared in disbelief, cameras in hands, assistants frozen. Some even took pictures, unable to believe that the famous actress was out in the rain helping a stranger. Sydney ignored them all. Her heart was racing, not from the rain, but from something far deeper. She realized in that moment she had become the one bending down, the one giving without asking, the one carrying kindness forward. That night, the story exploded online. Headlines spoke of her act, pictures spread across social media. People praised her, fans called her an inspiration. But inside, Sydney felt uneasy. She had not done it for the world. She had done it because it felt right. She remembered Keanu's words. The world remembers kindness longer than fame. And yet now, kindness was being turned into fame. Later that week, she met Keanu again, this time at a small charity event. When he saw her, his quiet smile told her he already knew what had happened. "You helped him," Keanu said softly, not as a question but as a truth. Sydney nodded. "But it became news everywhere. I didn't want that. I didn't want people to think it was for cameras." Keanu looked at her with calm eyes. "You cannot control what people say. You can only control why you act. The world may praise you today and forget you tomorrow. What matters is the heart you carried in that rain." His words eased her, but only for a moment. Then he added something unexpected. "Kindness is not always safe, Sydney. Sometimes it tests you. Sometimes it breaks you before it builds you." She frowned, unsure what he meant. "Breaks me?" Keanu's gaze deepened, as if he saw something beyond the present. "There will come a time when your kindness will be challenged, when others will mock it, twist it, or try to use it against you. That is when you must decide if it is still worth it." His warning stayed with her like a shadow. She left the event with a strange unease. Part of her felt proud of what she had done, but another part feared the test he spoke of. And yet, as the night sky stretched over the city, she whispered to herself, "Whatever comes, I will not forget what I saw in him. I will not forget the truth of kindness." She did not know it yet, but the storm she had walked into was only the beginning of a greater storm that waited ahead. The test came sooner than Sydney expected. It began quietly with whispers on social media, then grew into louder voices. People started saying her act in the rain had been staged. Some claimed the old man had been an actor hired to make her look good. Others posted videos cut in a way that made it seem like cameras were already waiting when she helped him. At first, she ignored it. She told herself the truth mattered more than lies. But the more she scrolled, the more the doubts spread. Headlines twisted her kindness into performance. Talk shows questioned her motives. Even people she thought were friends asked in soft, careful voices, "Did you plan it, Sydney?" The weight pressed on her chest until she could barely breathe. She sat alone in her apartment, lights off, curtains closed, scrolling endlessly through words that pierced her heart. She whispered to herself, Why does the world hate kindness? One night, after a long day of shooting, she found herself outside again, walking without direction. The city streets were alive with laughter, music, and cars rushing by, yet she felt utterly alone. Then, from across the street, she heard a familiar voice. "Sydney." She turned, and there he was. Keanu stood under a streetlight, his face calm, his presence steady, as if he had been waiting for her. She walked toward him, her eyes already filling with tears. "They think I lied," she said in a broken voice. "They think I did it for fame. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to fight it." Keanu stepped closer, his eyes steady. "You don't need to fight lies with noise. You live the truth until it drowns out the lie." Her lips trembled. "But it hurts. It feels like everything good is being turned into something ugly." "That is the test I told you about," he said softly. "The world will try to twist kindness because it cannot understand why someone would give without expecting something back. But Sydney, if you let their words stop you, then kindness loses. You cannot let it lose." Her tears fell then, but his presence steadied her. He did not tell her it would be easy. He did not promise the world would change overnight. Instead, he gave her something stronger. Truth wrapped in humility. Just then, a small voice interrupted them. A child, no older than 7, stood nearby with his mother. The boy clutched a small notebook and said shyly, "Miss Sydney, I saw what you did in the rain. I want to be kind like you." Sydney froze. Her heart stopped for a moment. She knelt down to the boy's height, her tears still on her cheeks. "You don't have to be like me. Just be kind in your own way. That's more than enough." The boy smiled and hugged her before running back to his mother. Sydney turned back to Keanu, her voice breaking. "Did you see that? Even one person, even one child." Keanu nodded. "That is why you cannot give up. If even one heart chooses kindness because of you, then the world has already changed." In that moment, the weight on her chest eased just enough for her to breathe again. She realized that no matter what others said, the truth of her actions lived in the people who saw them with open hearts. But deep inside, she also knew Keanu was right. The test was only beginning. More storms would come, more doubts, more pain. And she would have to decide again and again if kindness was still worth it. The storm grew heavier. Soon it was not only strangers on the internet who questioned Sydney. Some journalists began following her, waiting outside her home, chasing her with questions that cut like blades. Was it staged? Do you admit the story was fake? Is this just a publicity stunt? No matter how many times she stayed silent, the noise grew louder. Directors hesitated to offer her roles, afraid of controversy. Brands she had once worked with pulled away quietly. In just a few weeks, she went from being praised as a rising star of kindness to being doubted by millions. Sydney sat in her living room one night staring at the walls. Her phone buzzed with endless notifications, each one pulling her deeper into doubt. She whispered into the emptiness, "Maybe they're right. Maybe I should have done nothing that day." But then she remembered the old man's eyes in the rain. She remembered the little boy who said he wanted to be kind like her. She closed her eyes and held those memories close, like fragile treasures she refused to let go of. Still, the pressure broke her down. One evening, after a long day of harsh headlines, she walked to the ocean. The waves crashed against the shore, the cold wind hitting her face. She stood there, staring at the dark horizon, feeling as if she was drowning inside herself. A voice came from behind her. "It's heavy, isn't it?" She turned and saw Keanu walking slowly across the sand. His jacket flapped in the wind, his hair messy from the sea air, but his eyes carried the same calm strength. "I don't know if I can carry it," she admitted, her voice shaking. I feel like the whole world wants me to give up. I feel like I don't matter anymore. Keanu stepped closer, standing beside her as the waves roared. You matter, Sydney, not because of fame, not because of what they say, but because you chose to see someone who was invisible to others. You mattered to that old man. You mattered to that boy. You matter to every soul touched by kindness, even if the world tries to erase it. She closed her eyes, tears falling freely now. But how do I keep standing when everything keeps pushing me down? Keanu looked out at the sea, his voice steady. You don't stand alone. Strength is not about walking without falling. Strength is about rising again, even when your legs are weak. And sometimes, you borrow strength from those who believe in you. His words entered her heart like light breaking through dark clouds. She realized she was not alone. She had seen kindness, and she had given it. That truth could not be stolen, no matter how loud the lies became. Just then, the old man from the rain appeared on the shore, walking slowly with his cart. Sydney gasped. How could he be here, at this very place? He looked at her with tired eyes, but his voice was strong. They can say what they want, but I know the truth. You helped me when no one else did. Her chest ached as she stepped toward him. Thank you, she whispered. The old man placed a trembling hand over his heart. Never stop being kind, miss. Never. The wind carried his words like a promise. And in that moment, Sydney knew her test was reaching its peak. She turned back to Keanu. He gave her a small nod as if to say, This is your choice now. She inhaled deeply, her spirit trembling but not broken. Then I will not stop. No matter what they say, I will not stop. Keanu's faint smile returned, quiet and humble. Then you have already won. Weeks passed, and though the noise did not disappear, Sydney learned to walk through it with calmer steps. She no longer searched her name online, no longer chased the approval of strangers. Instead, she poured her energy into real people, the ones she could touch with her own hands and words. She began visiting shelters quietly, not with cameras or press, but in silence. She helped serve food. She sat with women who carried heavy stories. She played games with children who had forgotten how to laugh. And each time, she remembered Keanu's words. The world remembers kindness longer than fame. One evening, she was invited to speak at a small community center. She almost said no. Her fear of being judged still lived inside her, but something in her heart told her to go. When she arrived, the room was simple, filled with ordinary people, none of whom were there for fame. She stood before them, her hands trembling, and spoke from her heart. I am not perfect, she said softly. I have made mistakes. I have chased things that don't matter. But one night, I saw kindness that was real. And it showed me who I wanted to be. I don't want to be remembered for roles or awards. I want to be remembered for the way I treated people when no one was watching. Her voice cracked, but the silence in the room was deep. Then, slowly, people began to clap. Not the loud, empty claps of red carpets, but the steady, heartfelt claps of people who understood. After the event, she stepped outside into the night air, her chest lighter than it had been in months. And there he was again, Keanu, leaning against a wall, quiet as always. You spoke your truth, he said. Sydney smiled through her tears. I finally feel free. He nodded. You've learned something most people never do. Kindness is not about being seen. It is about seeing others. For a moment they stood in silence, the city lights glowing softly around them. Sydney felt gratitude rise inside her, deep and unshakable. Thank you, she whispered, for showing me the way. Keanu gave his small, humble smile. I didn't show you. You chose it yourself. And then, with the same quiet presence he had carried all along, he walked away into the night. Sydney stood there, watching until he disappeared into the crowd. She knew she might not see him again, but she also knew she no longer needed to. The lesson he had given her lived inside her now. From that moment on, every step she took, every role she played, every word she spoke, carried that light. And though the world would always have noise, Sydney had found a truth that no storm could take from her. She whispered into the night, "Kindness will always matter." And for the first time in her life, she felt truly whole.